The debate over whether the Philippines can realistically afford the KF-21 is no longer a theoretical question. It has become a strategic test of Manila's long-term intentions in air power, defense financing, and alliance alignment. The gap in the Philippine Air Force's current capabilities is well known. A single squadron of FA-50P-8s cannot provide deterrence, air defense, or sustained air sovereignty in a contested West Philippine Sea environment. The growing presence of maritime law enforcement and military platforms from China has exposed the limits of Manila's existing air posture. In that context, the KF-21 appears not simply as a new airframe, but as a potential pivot point for the country's security architecture between 2028 and 2040. The political foundation for acquiring the KF-21 is also unusually strong. The Philippines and South Korea have quietly built one of the most stable defense relationships in the Indo-Pacific. From FA-50s to the Jose Rizal-class frigates to the Hyundai offshore patrol vessels currently under construction, Manila has developed a habit of buying Korean hardware because it arrives on time, stays within cost projections, and comes with training and industrial cooperation. For Seoul, offering the KF-21 to Manila is a natural progression, a chance to lock in its first export customer, while strengthening a strategic foothold in Southeast Asia. For the Philippines, buying a next-generation fighter from a long-standing partner reduces political risk and increases policy continuity. The question that remains is whether the Philippines can finance such a program. A realistic package of 12 KF-21s would involve not just aircraft acquisition, but also training, simulators, spare parts, ground support equipment, and a 15-year maintenance plan. The airframe itself, based on current projections, will not be cheap, and the price will increase as the program transitions from Block 1 to Block 2. More importantly, the aircraft alone does not make the squadron combat-ready. The Philippines would need a stockpile of beyond visual range missiles, likely Meteor or AMRAAM, plus short-range missiles, targeting pods, and electronic warfare equipment. Each of these components adds significantly to the total cost. The ground ecosystem also matters. Modern fighters demand modern infrastructure, hardened shelters, expanded fuel storage, updated weapons storage areas, upgraded radars, and integrated data links across air, naval, and marine units. Much of this cost is invisible to the public, but it is critical for turning an aircraft purchase into a credible operational capability. To the credit of the Philippine Air Force, some of this groundwork is already underway, especially with the development of integrated command and control networks. Even so, the financial demands remain substantial. To evaluate whether the Philippines can truly afford the KF-21, one must examine the trajectory of the national defense budget. Philippine defense spending as a percentage of gross domestic product remains among the lowest in the region. The Horizon 3 modernization plan is ambitious, but its funding competes with maritime security, Coast Guard expansion, and internal security demands. Unless Manila increases defense spending toward 1.5% of gross domestic product over the next decade, a high-end fighter acquisition will strain the budget. The advantage of the KF-21 lies in South Korea's likely willingness to provide long-term financing. Seoul has a strong incentive to secure its first export customer, even if it means extending credit over 2 decades, similar to the model used for earlier FA-50 sales. This could drastically reduce the upfront burden on Manila. There is also the possibility of burden sharing from the United States and Japan. The United States has tools such as foreign military financing, excess defense articles, and foreign military sales credit mechanisms that could offset the cost of munitions or radar systems. While Washington may not subsidize the KF-21 directly, it has every interest in strengthening Philippine air power to support a more resilient alliance network in the Indo-Pacific. Japan, for its part, is gradually expanding its defense financing mechanisms and could support auxiliary systems such as radars or command and control infrastructure. Taken together, the three partners could help Manila spread the overall cost of a next-generation fighter program across multiple pillars. When comparing the KF-21 to the F-16 Block 70, the financial dimension becomes clearer. The F-16 package tends to have a higher acquisition cost and a more expensive weapons inventory, especially for advanced air-to-air missiles and standoff weapons. The KF-21 promises lower lifecycle costs due to modern design and more efficient maintenance architecture. South Korea is also more flexible in structuring financing, training packages, and long-term industrial support. Politically, however, the F-16 is backed by the strongest security partner of the Philippines. The United States can offer financial mechanisms that Seoul cannot fully match, even if the total program cost remains higher. Thus, Manila is forced to weigh immediate political alignment benefits against longer-term budgetary sustainability. Timeline also matters. The KF-21 could become available between 2028 and 2030, depending on production pace and export policy. The F-16 faces delivery queues into the late 2020s as multiple customers compete for production slots. If Manila wants an earlier capability, the KF-21 becomes more attractive. But that advantage will only matter if the Philippines secures the financing structure early, ideally before 2026, to align with the aircraft's Block 2 maturity. If the Philippines commits to the KF-21, the strategic benefits could be profound. Manila would become one of the earliest operators of a next-generation fighter in Southeast Asia, dramatically shifting the balance of air power. It would deepen long-term industrial cooperation with South Korea, potentially giving the Philippines regional maintenance roles. It would also create momentum for additional upgrades, including radar enhancements, missile integration, and joint training. Most importantly, it would standardize much of the Philippine Air Force's ecosystem around Korean platforms, lowering long-term sustainment costs and reducing fragmentation. Yet risks remain. If the Philippine defense budget stagnates, Manila may be forced to reduce the size of its initial squadron or delay munitions purchases, limiting operational readiness. Dependence on imported missiles could create supply bottlenecks. Domestic politics could reallocate funds toward the Navy or Coast Guard. The KF-21 program itself may face schedule risks as it transitions to later blocks. For the acquisition to succeed, Manila must commit to consistent annual funding and lock in multi-year financing agreements with Seoul and Washington. Ultimately, the Philippines can afford the KF-21, but only if three conditions are met. First, South Korea must provide a long-term credit package of up to 25 years, reducing upfront costs. Second, the United States should support radar and missile procurement through foreign military financing or similar programs. Third, Manila must gradually increase its defense spending toward 1.5% of gross domestic product to maintain the aircraft over its full life cycle. If these elements align, the KF-21 becomes not just an aircraft purchase, but a strategic investment that redefines Philippine air power for the next 2 decades.